There's no witches much in Ireland, except in Anglo-Ireland, in places like the east of the country, where you had the Anglo culture very strong. In other places you'd have had wise women, like Biddy Early would have been a good example. Mana Fassa, that might have been called. I was always interested in that kind of stuff, because I was interested particularly in the fairies. Nadine Ushla, Bunach, call them what you like. And where you had the Mana Fassa, you tended to have the connection between the two things, because lots of people went to these kind of wise women and wise men to get knowledge. If they were troubled by the fairies, who'll I go to? You couldn't go to the clergy, because you'd be very quickly put in your place. You should not believe in those kind of things, so you went to somebody who might help you, and that would be the likes of Biddy Early.
She helped people in her day, that's what we were told. People who were sick came to her, and she, when there was no doctors, no VHI, no consultants, no HICVA, no nothing like that, and they came to Biddy Early.
She probably worked in this area when she was alive for about 50 years, and her fame would have spread, and it was a period when, as we see, there was no electricity, no newspapers, there was dark nights and all that, and there was no much cures, and people kind of, their imagination, and also with regard to medicine, in that sense, that she filled a gap. She filled what I call the Placido gap, and a very interesting gap in people's lives,
She was born in 1798, they say, the year of the rebellion, and she died in 1874.
My honest opinion of Biddy is that she was a herbalist, most of all, and probably a very good herbalist. But again, there was nothing major about that. Her mother before her was the same, so there was nothing new about that, but she had this supposed power then to be able to read people's minds.
I know she would, when somebody may come to visit her, she knows they'd be coming. Or she know they'd be coming.
You never got in to see her. She was always asleep or something like that. So some guy would earwig outside, find out who you were, where you came from, what was wrong with you. You got in an hour later, and she'd say, "Oh, you're John Smith from that, and you're something." And they'd say, "Oh my God,
But people used to pay her with what they had. Half a dozen eggs, a chicken, a bottle of poutine, because just poor people came to her. People who couldn't afford a doctor.
Two things. One, she wouldn't accept money because she could be charged by that. She was cute enough to do that. And secondly, even cuter, that she never intended or never would go near a physical injury, like if you broke your arm. It was always these type of things with the fairies and the cows and milk and the eggs and the thing, and spells and pishogues and that. And she confined herself to that.
Sure, she was evicted by the landlord. And what's this she told? She predicted the landlord's death, and he was murdered. She told him that he'd be burned alive and his ashes would never be collected. That's what she told him when he evicted her. And that came to pass sometime after. He came and he was in his house, attached house, and he was beheaded. He put his head out the window when he had the knives outside, and he was beheaded, and the house was burned down, and they said his ashes were never collected. I don't know. I'm not able to say.
She didn't just do as she was supposed to do. I mean, she certainly would have slotted very well into the women's liberation movement of the 60s and 70s. She'd have been probably at the very forefront of it.
She was married 4 times, and she was a scandal, I suppose, to the parish of Feakle, in the sense that she ran a shebeen and she didn't get on with the clergy and she didn't get on with the police. Now, that wouldn't make her in itself a scandal, because if you didn't get on with the police that time, you could be a hero as well as a scandal. But the fact that she didn't get on with the priest, of course, and the priest seemingly preached off of the altar about her, that wasn't so good.
It was only late in the day that this Father Andrew Conlon, I think it was in 1868, he denounced her from the altar at that stage. And ironically enough, when she died in 1874, and he was summoned down to her deathbed and gave her extreme unction, and she was buried. But he died. He was suffering from cancer at the time, and he died about 6 months later. And of course, everybody that ruined it altogether. Everybody then believed Biddy Early, and that actually accentuated the fear of that. So that was part of it.
She turned my husband into here. He went out the door anyway, and 8 or 9 begs followed him. He came back 2 hours later and jumped in out the door again, down by the fire, and all the back of his trousers all tore.
These are the stories that are
No, it has to be said, and I came across it time and time again, that people felt that her name brought misfortune.
A fear was generated at the time they did up the house. This Biddy brought misfortune down on people. That a few people that were involved in it had tragic circumstances, and it was related to Biddy. You know, or of course it is very easy. You know, when you're looking for a reason, it is very easy to say, "Oh, you shouldn't have gone near Biddy Early."
Her name was taken by a guy from just back a little bit west Clare, and he decided he'd call his inn after her, you know, and went on actually to brew the products and all that. And a short time later, he was found dead in bed. So
people came from an English newspaper, and they claimed this fella. He claimed he was a grandson or a grandnephew of Biddy Early's, and he wanted to find where the house was. And the local man brought him down to see it. And that local man didn't live very long after that, and people associated that was the reason why of his demise.
again, a lot of people, as you say, don't necessarily want to talk about it because there's a lot of superstition out there in this world. And Ireland, I think, in particular, would have been a very superstitious nation.
It's amazingly enough that some people still are. I know a man, I won't give his name, and he's quite he was a school teacher, and I won't say any more, but he hardly will mention her name.
As a percentage of all the people who gave me stories about her, there are Feakle people in it, but there should be an awful lot more, considering that she is from Feakle. I didn't find as many as I should have. And, of course, the crazy thing is that in Feakle old graveyard there is no marker for Biddy. There is one on the wall outside for Brian Merriman and nothing for Biddy. Now, I said it in Feakle. Why? This makes utterly no sense. The most famous Clare woman of all.
When I was writing the history of Feakle, I met a man who actually quite factually, as he thought about it, showed me a fairy wrath. And he said when I was playing cards in that house here, we used to hear the fairies coming in at 2 in the morning. I could hear the gate lifting. I didn't dare ask him why the fairies had to lift the gate or make noise at the gate. But then I went to a man who lived across the road and I repeated the story. The guy said, "That's all nonsense," he said. I went back to the first man and told him that the other guy didn't. "Oh," he said, "but did you ask him, would he clean out his outhouse on St. John's Eve?"
Fairy belief isn't just an Irish thing. It's in every culture in the world, and you ask yourself why. So obviously it comes from somewhere serious. And we should at least ask ourselves, what place is that? If you can't believe in the fairies, you can't believe in God, because they're both of the otherworldly.
Religion and the bit of magic, you know, they're both in the same field, if you like, you know. You have beliefs and what you believe and what you don't believe. And the fact that there's a little bit of mystery and the thing that people cannot understand, the bit of mystique, that's what will keep it. Yeah, you know, if you can find a reason to everything, if the mystery goes out of a thing, it dies away. Yeah.
There are things that require explanations that scientists can't give us, and so therefore we create an explanation. It becomes a story, a mythology, or it becomes a superstition.
Everybody's afraid of the dark to some degree, or that of the unknown, and certainly that's within people, and we're always within, you know. We're talking about Higgs boson and all that, and the God particle, and that we've come from there. It's a long way to come in 200 years.
I think if you take away all of those beliefs, superstitions and so on, you take away a certain amount of magic.
Storytelling is probably dead in Ireland, or else I have been tremendously unlucky. But I don't think so. Storytelling in the old sense is gone. I have a big archive of tapes and all the rest of it, of a lot of people who are dead now. And I've asked quite a few of the people's grandchildren. Would you like to hear your grandmother or grandfather? And it always amazes me how many of those people, younger people, who are not interested.
Well, the young people don't know anything about her, so no, they do not.
Our stories are being lost, our archaeological heritage is being lost, our language is being lost, and instead of keeping what we had, trying to, we've just given in and swam with the tide. And with every old person that dies, a mini heritage dies with them.